Josepha, a Prairie Boy Story. Story by McGugan. Illustrated by Kimber. It was late in the last afternoon, long after the school bell, when I made my goodbyes to Josepha. Prairie winds ruffled his hair. Barefoot, he stood silent and still as a Saturday flagpole. The sun flickered between leaves in the windbreak poplars, licking his face in shadow and light, and a farm cart's 4 wheels groaned and whined not far down the gravel track. A farm cart coming for Josepha. Over the beating of my heart, I could hear them plain, drumming and churning inside my head. Josepha hummed the wagon's tune. He growled louder and louder as the wagon grew nearer and nearer. Then his eyes watered, and his breath gave out, and he coughed and laughed, and I laughed too. I tried to stretch up and clutch Josepha's elbow, but he broke free, and he reeled around me, clapping the gray dirt walk, smacking the land with the soles of his naked feet. Wee slaps bouncing up from the ground, like the whack of Josepha's twine suspenders plucking against his bare back. Rap, rap, tap. Josepha's slate oft-times slipped onto the pine plank floor, our schoolhouse floor, the floor way over the primary row. Rap, tap, tap. Red-faced Josepha, past 14 and trying to learn in primary row. Please, Josepha, Miss said, say it again. To the newcomers, our words must have sounded like sheep talk. The younger children might fight to understand, but the older ones never. When they braved to speak, they were made the fool. Always, Josepha bore, teasing with a smile. That last winter, though, someone dared to mock his sister. He reeled, then faced the class. I could smell his rage, and I was scared. Josepha quivered, but he could not say what he had to say. He did not know how. Later, Josepha wept. Miss sat beside him until home time, resting her hand on his shoulder. English speaking was the rule. Talk in English, print in English, think in English, or sit with the little ones till you're able. So silent Josepha sat with me, and became my friend, for always. All hushed and muffled, like a frozen river. A blushing bull in primary row, his final year in primary row. Josepha could never suffer older boys' bullying. Nobody bullied us younger ones, not with Josepha standing close. And he taught me stones could fly, clear across the marsh, if my aim was sure. I was his partner in the barrow race. One snowy night, he tramped straight over to our section, snowing and bitter sharp, yet he tramped up to our farm and back, his feet wrapped in burlap sacking. And still Josepha laughed. He laughed like there was nothing when he gave moth, poultice, herbs to soothe my aching ear. And now he tramped the land again, tramping the land with the bare soles of his feet, Dollar day, dollar day, dollar day, a back ink. He twirled about his sisters, jostling and jolting, because that's what you do. That's what you do if you have to laugh. Jostling and jolting and rustling up clouds. The yard dust powdered my boots, my brown boots with newspaper stuffed in the toes. They cost so much I didn't dare wear them except for very special times. Far too big and all, they were still the proudest thing I ever owned, and Josepha knew. When he saw the grit, his blue fulled hanky rubbed, and soon their leather toes shined again as bright as a birthday copper, while I twitched and fussed, embarrassed. Something dropped from his overall bib and lay tucked in the dirt. A knife. Josepha's pocket knife. Josepha opened the blade and blew on the steel and returned it to its slot. He spun the handle around in place. One side goose-egg white, the other bare, its covering lost or broken, but the metal gleamed. He turned his knife over and over. I remembered whistles he'd carved, and I remembered dolls he'd given the littlest ones, and arrows and bows for the recess games. He'd spun the knife round and round. Then jostling and jolting once more, he bumped into Miss, our teacher. She made Josepha stop, and she asked him again, "Please, stay. Won't you stay, Josepha?" She said his mind was soil-rich and set to open, like a flower to the sun, she said. She vowed he could learn. "Come back after threshing," she said. But Josepha's face darkened, lightless as the window in his family's sod shack just after milking. You saw their home when you passed by at night from selling grain in town. A lonesome soddy standing on the rise, wee and frail and blackened. Supper in the gloom to save kerosene. Until next harvest, or next. Pa said their storehouse was nothing but empty, and not a wonder, Pa said, for Josepha was the barn of a city folk, a Main Street shopkeeper's son. And Pa said, old country or no, shopkeepers didn't make farmers. Farmers made farmers. Josepha studied his teacher's eyes. He peered deep, his brow furrowing as if he were lost. Josepha sighed, and then, suddenly laughing, he said, "Is dollar a day, miss? Back ink?" Eton Catalogue English, we called it. Language enough for begging grain through threshing time. Language enough to earn a $1 wage. He smiled and pried ajar the lid of his biscuit tin. A meal pail for totting his boiled potatoes to school. From inside he offered up a violin, a doll violin, the span of a tanner's hand, whittled from a single shoot of cottonwood. "For you, miss, is for you." The gingham shoulders on Miss's dress sagged a mite before she stirred. She reached up to accept her gift, but Josepha drew it back. He flashed his knife. In a glint, the blade pared the slightest burr from the neck of the violin, and he placed the toy, like a day-old chick, into our teacher's hand. She realized the work and wanted to protest, but didn't dare. To Josepha, present offered must be taken. Josepha's eldest brother reined his wagon at the gate. Miss rubbed along the smoothness on the back of the violin with the edge of her thumb. She glared, angrily watching the old plow horse shake its leathers. The animal snorted, gnawing heads off some soft purple chicory clustered near the posts. And Miss brushed her thumb round and round, and said, "It is 1900, 1900, Josepha. A fresh century in your chosen land. You are quick and bright and cunning. Oh, the wealth of knowing you could reap." Josepha shrugged. Sheep talk. And Miss sighed. This was the way for all of them, those older ones. 1 year, shamed, maybe 2, and then they'd be gone from class. They'd be gone forever. "Best fortune, Josepha," Miss said, and then turning like a weather vane in a firebolt sky, she marched back to her empty school. Josepha upped his sisters into the wagon, and my forehead heated to a fever. A gift, I could not think. I wanted to offer a gift to Josepha, a gift of his own for all the marvels he had given us, the wonders he had given me. I wanted to take his hand again. I wanted to beg, "Don't be quitting school, Josepha." Instead, I watched him spring like a ram up alongside his brother in the cart. He squeezed a buckboard silver from his heel, then tossed down one last favor. Startled, I pressed his knife firmly to my chest. "Josepha, Josepha, I've a thing to give as well." And so it was. With a hrup hup, they were gone. Josepha shrinking smaller and smaller in the dust, and by the fork he vanished into a hazy puff. Alone, I crossed the fallows home. I clutched the knife inside my fist. I wrung it greedily for memories. Late in the last afternoon, trudging home, barefoot and pondering on Josepha.